Sam and Lily met on a Tuesday, down by the Harmony Creek where the water runs slow and the fireflies hang thick in the summer air. It wasn't a meeting so much as a collision, since Sam, strong as an oak and busy as a bee, was hauling a sack of millcorn and Lily was perched on a slippery river rock, sketching the old willow tree. He dropped his heavy load right at her feet, and she looked up at him with eyes the color of creek glass, and in that moment, the entire town of Harmony Creek could have sworn they heard fate humming a quiet tune. That's how deep it was, that connection, fast and true like lightning striking dry ground. Sam, he was a good, honest man, the kind who fixed what was broken and never let a debt sit. Lily, she was sunshine poured into a dress, running the sweetest little bakery south of the county line, making bread that tasted like forgiveness. They settled into a routine that felt ancient and right. Porch swings after sundown, sweet tea thick with honey, and plans whispered into the humid, velvet night air. But even as Sam held her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest, there was a shadow stretching long and cold behind him. It was a lie he hadn't chosen, but one he carried like a yoke, and he figured the only way to keep Lily safe and smiling was to never let her see the heavy burden tied around his soul. He prayed every night that his love would be big enough to bury the truth, not knowing that the biggest lie a soul can tell is the one it tells out of fear. Now, Sam wasn't just carrying regular worries, like a late mortgage payment or a busted truck axle. His worry had weight and smell like wet earth and something metallic. It was tied up in a scarred leather satchel, a thing he kept buried beneath the loose floorboards in the back of his woodshed. He'd inherited the satchel, along with the land his daddy left him, and the instructions that came with it were simple and terrifying. Don't open it. Don't speak of it. Just wait. Sam didn't know what was inside, not for sure, but he knew the moment he touched the heavy leather, his quiet, honest life in Harmony Creek became a kind of theater, where he was always acting the part of a man without secrets. Every time Lily would look at him, her eyes wide and trusting, talking about their future. Maybe a little house with a proper fence, maybe a few children running in the yard. Sam would feel that cold, metallic smell rising up from the woodshed floor, choking the honest words in his throat. He would just squeeze her hand tighter, smile wider, and tell her, "Anything you want, Lily love, anything at all." But he knew the promise was built on sand, because if he ever opened that satchel, or if anyone ever found it, everything he loved, including the sweet heart of Lily, would be lost to the cold, unforgiving current. The trouble with a lie is that it's like a seed planted in dry ground. It needs water, and it'll suck the moisture right out of the soil around it, leaving nothing good to grow. Sam's lie started showing up in small ways. He began to turn down trips to the neighboring town of Willow Creek, always claiming he had too much work. Lily, she didn't press, bless her heart, but she noticed. She noticed the way Sam's eyes would drift toward the woodshed when the sun started to sink, and the sudden quietness that would fall over him whenever a stranger's car passed too slow down their dirt road. He'd brush it off as tired nerves from a long day of carpentry, but the truth, like river mud, eventually settles and shows its color. Lily, too, had started walking on eggshells, because she had her own secret she was keeping, though hers felt like a necessary shield, not a terrible sin. Her bakery, the sweet spot, was suddenly thriving, growing faster than kudzu in July, and Sam just assumed it was her magic touch with yeast and sugar. But it wasn't just that. There was a man, a powerful, quiet man named Mr. Silas, who was providing the capital, and he demanded meetings, always in the shadow, always with a chilling demand for secrecy. Lily hated it, the whispering and the late hours, but she figured she was building a safe harbor for Sam, a place big enough for both of them, and that made the silence bearable, almost righteous. One humid evening, the smell of rain hanging heavy in the air, Sam was oiling his tools, trying to keep his mind steady, when Lily came to him with a curious question. She was holding a small, antique silver locket that she'd found while cleaning out the dustiest corner of the house. "Sam, honey," she said, her voice soft as velvet. "Whose is this? It's got a picture of a woman I don't recognize. And she looks worried." Sam's blood ran colder than a January river. He knew that locket. It belonged to the woman who used to live on this land, a woman connected to his father's past and, he suspected, to the satchel in the woodshed. He snatched it from her hand a little too fast, his muscles tensing beneath his skin, and the sudden, harsh movement startled Lily. The light went out of her creek glass eyes. "It's nothing, Lily love," he lied, forcing a smile that felt like cardboard on his face. "Just some old junk I meant to throw out. An old relative. Nothing that concerns you." He tossed the locket into the burning trash barrel with a finality that brooked no argument. Lily didn't say another word about it, but the sudden storm in Sam's eyes and the way he dismissed the woman's troubled face, that stayed with her, a tiny, hard pebble in the soft soul of her trust. She watched the smoke curl up, carrying the history of the locket away, and she felt a sharp, unfamiliar pang of doubt about the man she was sharing her life with, a doubt that felt heavier than any sack of mill corn. The air between them started to thicken up, getting sticky and hard to breathe, like a low-country fog. Sam would come home tired from pushing down his own fear, and Lily would return late from her silent, tense meetings with Mr. Silas, smelling faintly of stale cigar smoke and guilt. They would sit down to supper, and the easy talk about tomatoes and tractors, the kind of talk that stitches two lives together, was gone. It was replaced by polite, short questions and answers that skimmed the surface of their days, like skipping stones that never sink to the bottom. Sam started finding excuses to stay out longer in the evenings, working on his neighbor's barn, and Lily started spending hours meticulously cleaning the sweet spot, arranging spices and wiping down counters long after the last customer had gone home. They were circling each other, like two boxers who love one another but are bound by the rules of the ring to fight. Every touch felt a little hesitant, every kiss a little shorter. Sam would wake in the middle of the night, listening to the crickets and the lonely train whistle, and he'd reach for Lily only to find her on the edge of the bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. He wanted to tell her everything, about the satchel, about the fear, about the promise he'd made to a dead man, but the words felt too sharp, too dangerous, like a razor blade hidden in a warm, sweet dessert. He truly believed he was protecting her, building a fortress of silence to keep the darkness out. Lily noticed the woodshed. She couldn't help it. Sam never let her near it, not even to fetch kindling. He always did the chore himself, quickly and with his back turned to her. It stood out, that small, ordinary structure, like a single dark tooth in a perfect smile. One afternoon, while Sam was miles away fixing a roof, Lily found herself walking slow toward the woodshed. Her heart was beating a nervous rhythm against her ribs, but the need to know had become an ache she couldn't ignore. She pushed the rough, unlatched door open, and the smell of pine and dust and that faint, metallic scent hit her all at once. She saw the stack of neatly piled logs, the axes hanging on the wall, and the single dark patch of floor that looked different. It was cleaner, with faint scrape marks around the edges. Her breath caught. She didn't lift the floorboard. She didn't need to. The simple sight of the disturbed floor was enough. The lie was not just a feeling anymore. It was a physical fact, right there on the ground, a hole in the story of their life together. She stepped back quietly, letting the door swing shut, the sound echoing loud in the afternoon stillness. The knowledge didn't taste like victory. It tasted like ash. It gave weight to her own secret, the one about Mr. Silas and the money. If Sam had a shadow, maybe her shadow was only fair. She told herself, "We are equal in our darkness now, my love." The conflict shifted from unspoken tension to outright, if subtle, avoidance. Sam started keeping his wallet locked in his toolbox, a habit he'd never had before. Lily, remembering the disturbed floor, noticed and asked him, quiet as a mouse, why he was locking up his spending money. Sam immediately felt the cold spike of panic. He thought she was asking about the satchel. "Just good habits, Lily," he said, too quickly, the words snapping like dry twigs. "A man ought to keep track of what's his." His eyes darted away, unable to meet her steady gaze. Lily's face remained neutral, but inside, a tiny, fragile mirror of trust cracked. She didn't want to show him her own pain, her own secrecy. When she had to go meet Mr. Silas later that week, She didn't just say she was stepping out for errands. She gave him a rambling, overly detailed explanation about needing a specific type of flour from a neighboring mill, a story so thin it couldn't hold water. They were both building these elaborate, unnecessary walls, using lies as the bricks and silence as the mortar. They were terrified of the consequences of the truth, but the consequences of the lie were happening right now, in the quiet death of their intimacy. They could still hold hands, they could still sleep in the same bed, but the real heart of them, the part that shared and trusted, was moving farther away with every sunrise. One rainy Saturday, the kind of day that begs for honesty and comfort, the lie came very close to spilling over. Sam was working in the main house, finally replacing an old, termite-eaten windowsill. As he pried the old wood free, a small, tightly folded piece of yellowed paper fluttered out from the gap. It was a note, written in his father's hurried, nervous script. It read only, "Don't let them find the box. River's edge. They know about the pin." Sam stared at the note, the truth of the danger suddenly sharp and immediate. He heard Lily coming up the hall, her feet soft on the wooden floor, singing a tune. Instinct took over, raw and fast. He crumpled the paper and shoved it deep into his work jeans just as Lily stepped into the room. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, her song stopping short at the sight of his ashen face. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Sam tried to laugh, but it came out a strangled sound. "Just a big spider, Lily love. Termites and spiders. That's all this old house has got for secrets." Lily looked past him, at the dark gap in the wall where the note had been hidden. She was a woman of good sense and keen eyes. She knew a termite scare didn't drain the color from a man's face like that. She knew he was lying. And in that moment, a desperate, dark idea bloomed in her mind. Sam's secret wasn't small. It was dangerous. Maybe Mr. Silas, her own shadowy investor, could be a shield. Maybe her lie could protect them both from Sam's truth. The truth, Sam knew, would come out when he finally had to deal with the satchel. He was running out of time. He was seeing men he didn't recognize in town, sitting in cheap cars, watching the house. They weren't locals. They had the cold, sharp eyes of city folk with bad business. The tension was making him irritable, making him snap at Lily over small things, a misplaced hammer, a dinner that was too salty. And Lily, carrying the weight of her own clandestine meetings and the suspicion Sam was breeding in her, was snapping right back. The soft, easy rhythm of their life had turned into a series of jagged, jarring notes. One evening, after a particularly silent, miserable dinner, Lily excused herself, saying she needed to go to the bakery to check on the inventory. Sam knew it was a lie, not because she didn't need to check inventory, but because the way she said it, too firm, too quick, avoiding his eyes, was the same cadence he used for his own untruths. He didn't stop her. He was too consumed by the creeping sense that his past was finally catching up. He waited until her little car was out of sight. Then he walked out to the woodshed, pulled up the floorboard, and hauled out the heavy leather satchel. He took it down to the river's edge, where his father's note had said, determined to open it and face whatever terrible thing was inside. He had to know the full cost of his silence before the choice was taken from him. As Sam stood by the dark, rushing river, his hands clammy on the scarred leather of the satchel, Lily was driving fast to the edge of Willow Creek to meet Mr. Silas. He was waiting in a dimly lit, unmarked sedan, and his greeting was always chillingly polite. "Lily, my dear," he'd drawl, "I need an accounting. That money I advanced you for the sweet spot, I need to see the returns are substantial. And I hear your Sam is acting nervous. Is he getting nosy?" Lily swallowed the metallic taste of fear. She hated this part, the cold hand of obligation wrapped around her promising future. "Sam is fine, Mr. Silas," she insisted, her voice trembling only slightly. "He's just busy with work. The bakery is doing well, better than expected. I'll have the full quarterly figures next week." She lied about the figures, padding them to buy herself more time. As she drove back to Harmony Creek, the moon high and mocking, she justified her lie. "This money is what will save us. When Sam's trouble comes, this is the cushion, the safety net." But the deal with Mr. Silas was getting harder to keep secret, demanding more and more of her time and her soul. She started leaving the house with expensive gifts she claimed were from an old aunt. A new watch for Sam, a silk scarf for herself, tangible proof of a successful bakery, all of it funded by the secret meetings. The gifts were meant to soothe, but they only served as glittering monuments to her deepening deceit. Back at the river's edge, Sam finally opened the satchel. The leather creaked, protesting the years of silence. Inside, it wasn't money or jewels or anything grand. It was a collection of old, yellowed deeds, a thick ledger filled with coded numbers, and a single, tarnished brass pin shaped like a serpent coiled around a hammer. This must be the pin his father wrote about. But it was the ledger that held the true, terrifying secret. It documented a long-ago land scheme, a complex fraud that had cheated half the small, forgotten landholders in 3 counties out of their properties. The satchel was the final, critical piece of evidence needed to prove the fraud, and the people his father had defrauded or their descendants were looking for justice or maybe just revenge. Sam was not only holding a piece of criminal history, he was holding the key to bringing down several powerful, prominent families in the region. He wasn't just a man with a secret. He was a silent keeper of a generational crime. He closed the satchel, his hands shaking so violently he could barely latch it. He couldn't tell Lily this. How could he? It would drag her, and her sweet, honest life, into a vortex of legal and physical danger. He buried the satchel again, deeper this time, and vowed to protect his Lily by facing the approaching storm alone, even if his coldness and secrecy drove her away completely. He figured a broken heart was better than a broken life. The brass serpent and hammer pin, the one mentioned in his father's cryptic note, kept Sam awake at night. He had carefully tucked it into the lining of his old leather jacket, a constant, itchy reminder of the trouble he was holding. He knew he had to figure out what the pin meant, who the people mentioned in the ledger were, and, most urgently, who they were. The next morning, Lily woke up to find Sam gone. He'd left a brief note. Gone to look at a big job in Willow Creek. Back tonight. Don't worry, Lily love. That phrase, don't worry, was now the bitterest thing he could write. It was the heart of his deception. Lily felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Sam hadn't been to Willow Creek in months. He actively avoided it. Her immediate, instinctive thought was to connect his sudden, nervous absence with the movement she'd seen on the woodshed floor and the terror she'd seen in his eyes when the old note surfaced. He was chasing down his ghost. In a moment of panic and deep loneliness, Lily made a decision that would prove disastrous. She took the new, expensive watch Sam had given her, the one bought with Mr. Silas's money, and sold it back to the jeweler at a significant loss. She used the cash to hire a local, discreet investigator, a retired sheriff named Ray, to find out what Sam was really doing in Willow Creek. She felt sick with betrayal, but she reasoned that she had to know the truth of his lie to protect herself and the beautiful, fragile life they had built together. Ray, the retired sheriff, was old and slow, but he had eyes that missed nothing. He followed Sam to Willow Creek, to a dusty, forgotten corner of the old county courthouse. Sam spent the day poring over archival land records, desperately trying to decode the numbers in his father's ledger. He was learning that the land fraud was massive, and the victims were numerous, quiet, and now looking for the evidence he held. Ray didn't need to hear the whole story. He saw Sam's fear and the secretive way he handled the old papers. That night, Ray reported back to Lily. "He ain't cheating, Lily," Ray said, his voice low and gravelly. "He's running. He's looking for old trouble, the kind that costs a man his freedom or worse." He told her about the old deeds, the coded documents, and the atmosphere of quiet desperation that hung around Sam. Lily listened, tears tracking through the flour dust on her cheeks. Sam wasn't having an affair. He was in mortal danger. This was worse. Now, Lily's own secret, her partnership with Mr. Silas, took on a new urgency. She realized she couldn't confess her lie. She had to leverage it. She had to use Mr. Silas's power and influence to protect Sam, even if it meant burying herself deeper in debt and secrecy. She went to her woodshed, the one in her heart, and locked the door tighter. When Sam finally returned, exhausted and grim, Lily greeted him with a determined cheerfulness that was clearly forced. She didn't ask about Willow Creek. She simply told him, her voice carefully steady, that Mr. Silas had come by the sweet spot while Sam was gone. "He offered me a huge opportunity, Sam," she announced, trying to sound excited. "A chance to open a second bakery in the city, a proper, fancy place. It means more money than we ever dreamed of." She watched Sam's face for a reaction. His eyes narrowed, not with jealousy or pride, but with pure, unadulterated suspicion. Lily's new opportunity out of nowhere sounded too easy, too good, too dangerous. He knew the money he had was tainted, but he also knew that easy, sudden money was almost always tainted too. "Mr. Silas?" Sam asked, the name tasting like rust on his tongue. "What does that man want with a second bakery, Lily love? That's not his kind of business." Lily snapped. "Why do you always look for the bad in everything? Maybe I'm just that good. Maybe I deserve a big, shining chance." The fight flared hot and fast, not about the bakery, but about the unspoken, heavy suspicion that they were both carrying. Sam, convinced her money was a distraction from his own troubles, let her words hang in the air, thick with mistrust. They ended the night sleeping back to back, the space between them wider than the Harmony Creek itself. The pressure cooker was building up steam. Sam, desperate to find a way out without involving Lily, made a rash decision. He reached out to one of the names he'd seen in his father's ledger, a man who was rumored to be looking for the satchel. Sam met the man, whose name was Joe, in a grimy roadside diner, the fluorescent lights humming over their heads. Sam offered Joe the satchel, the key to the old land fraud, in exchange for a guarantee of safety for himself and Lily. Joe was a cold, efficient man who didn't smile. He agreed to the deal, but his eyes, sharp and assessing, lingered a little too long on Sam's face. Joe demanded the satchel be delivered the following night, after midnight, at the old, deserted mill on the edge of town. Sam felt a flicker of hope, a desperate feeling that this was the end of his lie. Meanwhile, Lily, hearing rumors of Sam's hurried trip to the diner, cornered Mr. Silas. She told him, her voice desperate, about Sam's business with Joe. She presented it as a threat to her new investment. "If Sam gets in trouble," she pleaded, "your money is at risk. You have to stop him, Mr. Silas. Protect us." Mr. Silas smiled, a thin, chilling expression. "You worry about the bakery, my dear," he said. "I'll handle your Sam, and I'll ensure your loyalty remains with me." Lily spent the next day feeling like she was walking underwater, the air heavy and distorted. She had betrayed Sam's trust to a cold, powerful man, convinced she was saving him. She didn't know what Sam was giving Joe, only that it was dangerous. She was certain Mr. Silas would simply intercept the meeting, maybe buy off Joe, and keep Sam safe, tied to Harmony Creek and her. She didn't anticipate the brutality of Mr. Silas. Sam, meanwhile, was preparing to leave the house late that night, the satchel hidden under his worn jacket. He told Lily he was going to a late-night carpentry auction, another thin lie. Lily looked at him, her eyes clouded with guilt and love. She wanted to grab him, tell him about Mr. Silas, tell him about her desperate, awful plan to save him, but the fear of exposing her own deceit held her tongue captive. She could only kiss him on the cheek, a kiss that felt like goodbye. "Be careful, Sam," she whispered, her heart hammering. "Please, just be careful." Sam smiled, a genuine smile this time, because he truly believed that by morning, he would be free of the burden, and their life could finally begin, honest and whole. He walked out the door, the heavy satchel swinging by his side, oblivious that Lily's secret was now a far greater threat than his own.